So I'm 23. I'm from the UK. I run a faceless YouTube channel called Wi-Fi Uni with 25,000 subscribers, and it makes me around $2,000 a month. And today I want to talk about something that I think about a lot, which is the 9 to 5, and whether it's actually a good deal for people my age right now. And I want to be clear before I start that I'm not going to sit here and tell you the 9 to 5 is evil or that anyone who has a job is doing it wrong, because that's not what I think, and that's not what this video is. And honestly, that kind of take is usually coming from someone trying to sell you something. And I'm not trying to do that. Please excuse this AI slop voice. I promise the value in this video is worth it. What I actually think is more nuanced than that. And what I want to explore is whether the 9 to 5 as a default, as the thing you do without really questioning it because it's what everyone does, makes as much sense for people my age right now as it did for previous generations. And I think the honest answer is probably not. And the reason for that is specific to the moment we're in, rather than some general argument about employment being bad. So let me start by saying what's actually good about the 9 to 5, because I think it's worth acknowledging before I get into the rest of it. A job gives you a predictable income, and predictability has real value, especially when you're young and you've got rent to pay and things to figure out. And the stress of not knowing where the money is coming from is a real thing that I don't want to dismiss because I've felt it myself. And a salary removes that stress in a way that building something from scratch doesn't, at least not in the early phase. A job also gives you structure, and I think structure matters more than people admit. Like having somewhere to be and something to do and people around you is genuinely valuable. And a lot of people who quit their jobs to build something online discover pretty quickly that the absence of structure is harder to deal with than they expected. And a job gives you skills and experience and a professional network, and those things compound over time in ways that are genuinely useful, regardless of what you end up doing with your career. So I'm not here to tell you a job is worthless. It's not. But here's the thing, and this is where I think the argument gets interesting, which is that the 9 to 5 as a deal has got progressively worse for people my age over the last couple of decades, at exactly the same time that the alternatives have got progressively better. And I think that shift is significant enough that it's worth actually thinking about, rather than just defaulting to the traditional path because it's what you're supposed to do. The deal getting worse side of the argument is pretty well documented if you look at the numbers. And what they show is that wages for entry-level jobs have not kept pace with the cost of living, particularly housing. And what this means in practice for a 23-year-old in the UK is that you can come out of university with a degree that cost you tens of thousands of pounds, get a job that pays 30 grand a year, and find that after rent and bills and food and transport, there's not a huge amount left. And the idea that you'll work your way up the ladder and eventually reach a point where the maths feels comfortable is real, but it takes a long time. And in the meantime, you're trading the most energetic and creative years of your life for a salary that doesn't leave much room to build anything of your own. And the other thing that's changed is the security that used to come with employment. Like the idea that if you put your head down and worked hard for a company, they'd look after you. That feels a lot less reliable than it did for previous generations. And I think most people my age know that, even if they don't say it explicitly. Like the loyalty between employer and employee feels more transactional than it used to. And that changes the calculation of whether the deal is worth it. Now, here's the bit I actually find most interesting, which is the alternative side of the argument. Because I think the thing that's changed most dramatically for people my age is not that the 9 to 5 has got worse, it's that the gap between the 9 to 5 and the alternative has narrowed in a way that just wasn't true 10 or 20 years ago. And the specific alternative I know most about is Faceless YouTube. And I want to talk about why I think the timing for this specific thing has never been better. Because I think people either dismiss it as too competitive or assume it requires some kind of special talent or advantage that they don't have. And I don't think either of those things is true. The reason the timing is good right now comes down to a few things that have converged at the same moment. And the first is AI voiceover technology, which 2 years ago when I started was already good enough to make a faceless channel work, and it's gotten significantly better since then. And what this means is that the production barrier to making a decent YouTube video has basically collapsed. Like, you don't need a camera, you don't need a recording setup. You don't need video editing skills that take years to develop. You just need a script and a laptop and a few dollars a month for a voiceover tool. And that's genuinely new. That wasn't true 5 years ago. The second thing is that the AI content niche itself is in a period of growth that I think still has years to run. Like, the audience of people who want to learn about AI tools and how to use them to build income is growing faster than the content supply. And a channel that starts today in this niche and posts consistently is entering a market that is still expanding rather than contracting. And that matters enormously for how quickly a channel can build momentum. And the third thing is the sponsor ecosystem, which I've talked about in other videos, but I think is worth repeating here, which is that the companies building AI tools have real money, and they need to reach exactly the kind of audience that a faceless educational channel in this niche builds. And that means monetization is available earlier and at a higher rate than most people expect. And the path from zero to something meaningful is shorter than it looks from the outside. So when I think about the choice between a 9 to 5 and building something like Wi-Fi Uni, the way I frame it is not that one is good and one is bad. It's more that the opportunity cost of defaulting to the 9 to 5 without at least trying to build something on the side has never been higher, because the tools available to build something real have never been more accessible, and the window for this specific opportunity in the AI content space won't be open forever. And I think the thing that frustrates me a bit about how this gets talked about is the binary framing. Like, it's either you grind at a job or you quit everything and go build a channel full time. And most people reject the idea because they can't imagine doing the second thing. But that's not actually the choice, because Wi-Fi Uni started as something I did alongside everything else, posting every other day, fitting it around whatever else I had going on. And it grew into something that now makes $2,000 a month. And that happened without me having to burn anything down to make it work. The 9 to 5 and building something don't have to be mutually exclusive. And I think for most people, the right move is to do both for a while. Keep the salary while you build the channel, and then reassess when the channel is actually making meaningful money. Because that's a much lower risk version of the decision, and it doesn't require you to bet everything on something that's still unproven. But the bit I want to leave you with is just the optimism. Because I think a lot of content about this topic is either unrealistically positive in a fake guru kind of way, or cynically negative in a way that just leaves you feeling like nothing is possible. And I want to try and land somewhere more honest than either of those. I'm 23, I'm from the UK, I started a faceless YouTube channel with no connections and no starting capital, and no particular advantage, and it makes me $2,000 a month. And the tools available to someone starting today are better than the tools I had when I started. And the opportunity in the niche is still real. And the barrier to entry is genuinely low if you're willing to put in consistent work over a long enough period. That's not a guarantee of anything. And I'm not going to tell you it's easy or that everyone who tries it will succeed, because that's not true. And I'd rather be honest than inspiring. But the honest version of the situation is that it has never been easier to build a faceless channel that makes real money. And if you're my age and you're wondering whether the 9 to 5 is the only option, the answer is pretty clearly that it isn't. And the gap between what's possible and what most people are doing is still wide enough that there's real opportunity in it for anyone willing to actually go after it. If you want help building something like this, I do have a school community linked in the description. There's direct feedback available depending on which tier you join. No pressure at all. Cheers for watching.